Welcome to another episode of the Building Blocks of Rock for Guitar, where every week or two I'll look at a different chord, riff, or lick shape from my free web app, The Building Blocks of Rock, at guitarviz.com. Today we'll look at a part of the fretboard map a lot of players might not be as familiar with. It lives in between the two most common bar chord shapes. Like those shapes, it's movable, and it's home to riffs like this. Or this. This. In this video, we'll look at one of the most common riffs, how it's related to the underlying chord and scale, and most importantly, how to get comfortable moving it around the neck so you can start using it more in your own playing. The video has chapters you can skip around, and as always, if you like what you see, please remember to like or subscribe. In a few minutes, I'll talk more about how the riff is used in those three songs from the start of the video, but first, here's a quick look at a few other songs that use that same riff. No Way Back by the Foo Fighters. Don't Let Me Down by the Beatles. Live version of Rock and Roll by Lou Reed. Great instrumental breakdown at the end. So this riff we're talking about, and others like it, live in between the two basic bar chord shapes. The A shape, 5th string root, and the E shape, 6th string root. Go back to the A shape, look at where you're barring with your 3rd or 4th finger, and move the 1st finger there. Use that for the bar instead, covering the same exact strings, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. And then add 2 additional notes on the 5th string. The first one at the same fret as the bar, the second one 2 frets higher. Now later on, we'll look at these notes and where they come from, how they're related to the underlying chord or scale. But for right now, just think about these 2 notes on the 5th string and the different ways you could play them in combination with the bar. You could play them as individual notes, like in Gimme 3 Steps. You could slide between the 2 notes, like in Lights. You could even add a note in between the 2 notes. Make it a chromatic walk up the 5th string, like in Sweet Home Alabama. But the most common is to hear this riff as a hammer-on. And when you do that, you're not usually hearing the 5th string as just a single string hammer-on. You usually hear it as multiple strings being strummed at the same time. So that means you've got to move the bar over 1 string, so it starts on the 5th string and covers the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings, maybe the 2nd. In the Wind Cries Mary, Jimmy takes a basic chord progression, E flat, E, F, and makes it more interesting by sometimes using this riff over those same exact chords. E flat, E, F. Later on, underneath the guitar solo, the rhythm guitar part, you'll also hear this riff over the E flat chord. Sweet Home Alabama, another example of taking a basic chord progression, D, C, G, and making it more interesting by using a little riff over each one of those chords. Over the D chord, over the C chord, G chord. Over the D chord, kind of similar to what we've been looking at, except instead of a hammer-on, It's a chromatic walk up the 5th string. Over the C chord is the hammer-on. Notice here that usually you hear this hammer-on riff as multiple strings for the hammer-on, but here it's just a single string hammer-on on the 5th string. And over the G chord, almost like an open string version of this hammer-on riff. You could visualize the bar as being here at the nut. We'll look more closely at all three of these riffs, slowed down with close-up views of the fret hand and the pick hand in the second half of this video, the lessons segment. Listen to the music. The foundation of this song musically, the song hook, is a combination of this riff and a second riff. The first riff, basically an E chord. The root is E, here at the 12th fret of the 6th string. Second riff, basically an A chord. The root is A at the 12th fret of the 5th string. So it's basically an E to A chord progression. The hardest part about this song to make the riff really punch and stand out is the strumming. First off, it's an underlying 16th note rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But you've also got this strong emphasis on the backbeat, the 2 and the 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put it together, it kind of sounds like this. At the end of this video, in the second half, the lesson segment, I'll go over the strum in more detail. Also a couple of other fun things about this song guitar-wise. At the end of each verse, a little sus chord thing they do. And at the end of the chorus, interesting way they have of playing the F sharp chord, followed by a little riff. Like most riffs, this is more of a rhythm guitar thing. You'd use it instead of a chord, or along with a chord. So start by asking yourself, what chord am I playing over? And then use one of these following ways to figure out where to bar the first finger. The first, and probably the easiest way, is to cue off that basic A-shaped bar chord, like we were talking about before. Example, you're playing over a C chord. Well, if you're using this shaped bar chord, you're going to be here at the 3rd fret. And move your first finger to where the little bar is, up here at the 5th fret, 2 frets higher. The second way is you can do kind of the same thing using an E-shaped bar chord, except instead of counting up 2 frets from the root, you're counting down 3 frets from the root. Again, using C as an example. You're going to be here at the 8th fret if you're using this shaped bar chord. Count down 3 frets from the root, and here you are at the 5th fret. That's where your bar goes. The advantage of thinking of it this way is it more closely aligns with the underlying shape of this riff, which is really based off of a G shape. A little bit difficult to do the chord, but it would look like that. Notice that note on the 5th string. It's part of our riff. Another advantage is that it aligns with the major pentatonic scale shape. Again, look at that note on the 5th string. Click on the shape to see the intervals. You'll see that's the major third. That means this is a major chord type of riff. You wouldn't want to play it over a minor chord. Example, if you're playing over a C minor chord, this riff is not going to sound good. The third way, and probably the most accurate, is to think of it as a 3rd string root. On the 3rd string, find the note that matches the chord you're playing over. For C, this would be here at the 5th fret. That's where the bar would go. This does, however, require that you know the names of the notes on the 3rd string. And finally, the last way, I'd like to think the easiest, is use my app. Find the shape, move the root to match the chord you're playing over. For C, that would be here at the 8th fret. The bar is 3 frets lower at the 5th fret. Next up in the lessons segment, I'll go over how to play this riff in both Listen to the Music and Sweet Home Alabama, slowed down, up close, including the pick hand and the strumming. If you don't want to continue on to the lessons, thanks for watching, and please remember to hit like or subscribe before you leave. Sweet Home Alabama, one of the most requested songs on YouTube guitar channels, So there's lots of videos out there on how to play it on guitar, but there's also lots of inconsistencies between these videos, especially on the subtle details. What I've used as the source of truth in teaching this riff is an interview of Ed King, the guitarist who came up with the riff, by Marty Schwartz, the big YouTube guitar teacher. And the interview has some great close-ups of exactly how Ed plays it, which doesn't always match how Marty teaches it, but it's a great video, real interesting, and a historical record, since Ed has now passed away. So thanks to Marty for sharing it with the world on his YouTube guitar channel. Sweet Home Alabama. I'll play it fast, slow, then break it down phrase by phrase. Normal speed, 3, 4. Slow speed, 3, 4. So this section is 2 bars long. There's 3 different riffs in it. And the first riff comes over the D chord. So we'll start here, barring the first finger at the 7th fret. How did we get here? Well, if you're thinking of the D chord as coming off this A shape, you're putting your first finger where the pinky or ring finger is at the 7th fret. If you think of it as coming off of the E shape or G shape, the root is here at the 10th fret. This note's there. Again, the bar is at the 7th fret. So no matter how you get there, you want your first finger barred at the 7th fret. And this first riff goes like this, 3, 4. You start with a chromatic walk up the 5th string, and then the bar, but not playing, you don't include the 2nd string, it's just the 3rd and 4th string. Now the picking, Ed in that video uses cross picking to go up the 5th string. Down, up, down. And he uses upstrokes for that when playing that bar. You look at other Skynyrd's guitar players, say Gary Rossington, looks like he uses all downstrokes for that riff. Ricky Medlock, one of the later guitar players, looks like he might even be using a hammer-on. But Ed is using cross-picking. And you come out of that riff by sliding down the 5th string to get into position for the next riff. The second riff comes over a C chord, so your first finger is barred at the 5th fret. How did we get there? Again, if you think of a C chord as an A shape, 5th string root, you're here at the 3rd fret, move your first finger to bar in place of your pinky or ring finger. If you think of it as coming off of an E shape or a G shape, both of which are 6th string root at the 8th fret, the note on the 5th string is going to be 1 fret lower, and the bar 3 frets lower here at the 5th fret. So your first finger is barred at the 5th fret, and the riff goes like this. Starts with a hammer-on the 5th string, and then the bar. Oops. But you're leaving out the 2nd string, just like you did the first time. It's just the 3rd and 4th strings. And I always played this with upstrokes on the bar, just like the first riff. 2 upstrokes. But looking at Ed's picking carefully in the video, it looks like he uses an upstroke the first time, but a downstroke the second time. So, FYI, small detail. I
also saw in that video that Ed was really emphasizing the importance of these two slides in this section and how a lot of people miss them. Again, the first riff has a slide down, and the second riff also has a slide down. I too missed this slide in the opening of this video. If you look carefully in the second riff, I think, I know I didn't do that slide. I did it probably using a hammer instead. My bad. So, second riff, one more time. 3, 4. And finally, the last riff comes over a G chord, open G chord. And it's pretty simple. Just a hammer on the 5th string, 4th string, 3rd string, 6th string. Played slowly, sounds like this. 3, 4. Again, in the video, it looks like Ed uses his, Ed does use his middle finger for the hammer-on. Whoops. And the ring finger for the 6th string. Maybe because he's used to doing the open G chord like this, like a lot of players do. And other players sometimes do it like this too. So I tend to use the first finger here for what it's worth. Okay, so we'll do the whole section at slow speed. 3, 4. Now speed it up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Listen to the music. Tom Johnston starts it off on electric. Pat Simmons joins in a few bars later on acoustic. I'll start off by playing the riff mid-tempo, then slow it down, then break it down phrase by phrase, and I'll end with a quick look at the guitar parts and the rest of the song. There's some interesting little riffs buried in there that you might not hear until you listen closely to the music.
3, 4. Slower speed. 3, 4. I'll play it phrase by phrase, but first off, we're here at the 9th fret. The first finger is barred there. The 3rd finger at the 11th fret of the 5th string. And this is basically an E chord. The root is here at the 12th fret of the 6th string. Couple things to note. First off, watch close-up video of Tommy Johnston, the guitar player. You'll see that right after he does this initial hammer-on, he shifts his first finger over to bar only 3 strings while he's strumming this chord. Probably because it's a lot more comfortable to strum. It just feels more natural to bar only 3 strings while you're strumming rather than keep it barred over 4 strings. Secondly, there's the occasional open string, open 6th string over this guy, open 5th string over this guy. We'll talk about that more later on, but just be aware they are there. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, there's a really strong emphasis on the backbeat, the 2 and the 4 beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you get that with a combination of fret hand and pick hand. Right after it's like this. Form your finger in this basic bar. shape. First finger here, third finger there. And strum the strings, and right after, let go with your fret hand. While at the same time, you deaden the strings with your pick hand. And that pick hand, that strum's got to be strong. It's not no wimpy strum like it's a really make it slap. And again, we'll cover that more as we move along. Okay, taking it phrase by phrase. The very first phrase starts with a hammer-on, along with the open 6 string. So you're barring 4 strings. And right after that comes that strong downstroke on the 2 beat. And then more strumming. Sounds like this. 3, 4. Another thing you might notice is that there's the occasional fret hand muting where you're just strumming strings and they're not sounding. Again, very slowly. The first bar. 3, 4. Here's the second bar. Again, starts with a hammer-on and an open 6 string. Okay, let's analyze that. This second bar starts off with basically a repeat of the hammer-on. And then it shifts to the A chord. Keeping your first finger barred across those 3 strings, the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings, hammer on with both fingers at the same time to form this shape. Whoops. Kind of that classic Keith Richards sound, or you hear it in a lot of other songs. You're strumming the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings while hammering on with the 3rd and 2nd fingers. Along with, if you can keep track of this all, along with an open 5th string, an open A string. And then it's strumming, followed by a pull-off. And then a couple of open 6 strings. All right, let's play that second bar all the way through. 3, 4. Finally, a note about those open strings. You'll hear the open 6 string at the beginning of each bar like this. 3, 4. And then the open 5th string when you do the hammer-on for the A chord. And finally, the open 6 string a few more times at the end of that second bar. And I'll play it through again, but it seems to me when I listen to the isolated guitar that I'm not hearing that open 6 string continue to ring out after the hammer-on like this. Instead, it seems to go dead pretty quickly. Probably because when you shift the first finger bar over to cover only 3 strings, your thumb kind of naturally wants to get closer to the neck, effectively deadening the 6th string. And finally, starting to speed it up a bit. 3, 4. A couple of other fun facts about the guitar parts in this song. In the verse, after doing this riff a few times, they go to straight up bar chords, 6-string root, starting with the C sharp minor at the 9th fret, B at the 7th fret, A at the 5th fret. Tommy Johnston tends to add the open 6-string in between. And at the end of the verse, they each do something slightly differently. Tommy Johnston lifts up his pinky off the 4th string to make it a 7th chord type of sound, and then a little hammer-on the 3rd string to give it a sus7 type sound. Pat Simmons, meanwhile, when he goes to the A chord, he doesn't do the full bar. Instead, he goes to this 3-noter, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string, along with the open 5th string and the open 1st string to give it this type of sound. And then does that little sus chord thing on the 3rd string. Similar to Ramble On, Jimmy Page doing this. For the chorus, once again, basic bar chords, starting with a C sharp minor chord, but this time it's a 5th string root, A minor shape, instead of a 6th string root. It's here at the 4th fret, with the 6th string too. That bar covers the 6th string. And then moving to an A chord 6th string root at the 5th fret. Very percussive playing, adding in the open 6th string in between. And then moving to the F sharp 7, but it's an interesting shape. Instead of a full-on bar, it has the open 1st string to give it that 7th. Kind of similar to Pinball Wizard, the opening. With the thumb wrapped around for the 2nd fret of the 6th string. And finally, the chorus ends with this little riff, this double stops on the 4th and 3rd strings. Adding in the open 5th, 2nd, and 1st strings too. Sounds like this. So the whole chorus.
If you want to go on and learn the entire song, here are some recommendations I have for other YouTube videos. The Wind Cries Mary, one of my favorite guitar channels, 12-Foot Chain, has a nice lesson on the entire song. He does a good job of capturing all the little rhythm guitar embellishments that Jimmy tended to use. Sweet Home Alabama, lots of YouTube videos on this one. I think it's the most requested song on YouTube as far as guitar lessons. But as I mentioned, I like the Marty Schwartz interview with Ed King, the original guitarist, who shows Marty how he plays the song. Listen to the music. The strumming is an integral part of the song, but I still haven't found a YouTube video that really shows that emphasis on the backbeat that you need, the 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm afraid I'll have to give this MIA on YT, missing in action on YouTube. I did show most other parts of the song in the lesson segment. Hopefully that gives you most of what you need. All right, thanks for watching. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing, please remember to hit the subscribe button. Thanks. I'll see you next time.